Welcome to the Kung Fu Discussion Group, Episode 2. Today, we're starting off with myself, Uncle Sickness, and my disciple and homeboy, Mako. We're going to be discussing the etiquette related to opening and closing the practice of Santi-share, if that makes any sense. Okay. Now, a lot of people know, especially if you've been reading things I've posted at sicknesskungfu.com. Don't miss the plug. I've written a bit about martial ethics, martial morality, the code of conduct in the world of martial arts as it stands now. I've also posted a bit about the sort of code of behavior of the ancient wandering knights, the Shah of Chinese history, the famous wandering heroes of awesome martial arts movies, which I know I love more than anything else in the world, and I'm sure everybody out there loves them just as much as me.
We do movies with those.
Yeah, so any of those Shaw Brothers classics is basically what I'm getting at. Anything set before the 18th century, up to today, anything set before that is going to have one of these just random weirdos who wanders the world with one or more weapons and a completely insane code of conduct and this ridiculous sense of individuality that makes even a weirdo like me in America in the 21st century look fucking tame in comparison. As I was saying, the etiquette of the martial arts world isn't just, respect your teacher, be pleasant to your classmates, don't pick fights and be rude with outsiders kind of thing. There's also the ritualistic actions associated with the practice of the style. Okay? So in any martial art, you'll see it in little details, once you become aware of this sort of thing, you notice it very clearly, very obviously. The small details and how they practice their postures, the positions of the hands and feet, do they use palms? Do they use fists? What are the relations of the hands to each other? What are they in orientation in relation to the body, because even outsiders will note that there are some static positions, fixed positions that martial artists will take that are obviously not for fighting purposes. There are some positions that just, how are you going to defend yourself like that? What are you defending yourself from in that position? You're not defending yourself. You're sending a message with posture. It's like body language ramped up to 1,000. Okay, so with Santi-share, right off the bat, I don't know, Alex, how much research you've done on YouTube and stuff, but in Xing Yi Chuan, the two major factions are the Hebei group and the Shanxi group.
I've heard of the Hebei group, but the Shanxi group I have absolutely no knowledge on.
Okay, well, they're based in the provinces of the same name. Mm-hmm. The founder of Xing Yi Chuan, Divine Fist, or Magic Fist, Li Loneng, his martial arts nickname was Shen Chuan, so you can take it as godly or divine or magical, and Chuan is obviously fist. He created Xing Yi in his 40s while working as a house security guard and bodyguard in Shanxi province. He was born and grew up in Hebei province. So he worked for most of his middle age in Shanxi province, took his first group of disciples there. So the Shanxi style, the Shanxi group, the Shanxi substyle of Xing Yichuan is older than the Hebei style. But when he retired, he went back home to Hebei province. And that's where you get the Hebei faction of the Hebei group. My Xing Yichuan is Hebei faction, basically. But, if you're any martial artist of any style worth their salt is going to take what works and incorporate it. So I learned a Hebei style derivative, but I've incorporated personally a lot of Shanxi elements. But if you look at the etiquette, and I didn't mention this yet, but signatures are something we're going to get into today. If you look at the signatures hidden in the way I practice, you're going to see things that mark me as clearly a Hebei type, a Hebei group, a person from the Hebei group. But you're also going to see things that you won't see anywhere else other than me or people who have learned from me. So the signatures that I just mentioned, they're little elements, little flourishes added in to the static positions, the opening and closing motions, and the performance of routines. In addition to, a lesser extent, preferences in techniques and applications that will mark an individual as related to a particular teacher or a particular lineage or a particular group of students in one teacher's lineage. Okay, so obviously a guy who's 60, 70 years old and has been teaching since he was 30 or 25, he's going to have a lot of groups of students. So there's usually going to be differences, really marked, obvious differences between the way the very first group that he taught when he first started, how they move, what they do, what their preferences are, as opposed to people he taught later in life. If it's a guy who's 70 years old in 2019, the people he's taught in 2019 are going to look different, they're going to move different, they're going to have different body language and motion tics built in than the people that he taught when he was 30 years old, in 1960 or something,
Yeah. I actually have a really good example of that. In my early years of martial arts, as a wee lad going in from ages of 8 to 9, 10, I was practicing Aikido. Some people know it as Aikikai, in not too far from where I grew up. And the dojo of the fellow I was studying under, he came from Japan to the United States, and there was a set of katas. It was basically sword practice with a wooden sword, a bokken. And originally there were 16 katas. They were super complex, some of them. And then he broke it down to 8 or 7 katas that were much more concise and much more, in his words, they were more to the point, really. And they were just a few back and forth, counter attack and stuff like that in a block here, block there.
Yeah.
It was part of one of the testing to get to a higher belt. But he had taken what he had learned before and concised it down and changed it a lot. So other teachers from other folks that taught Aikikai weren't too familiar with the ones that he was teaching. And one of the seminars that I went to when I was going into my teen years, saw they were very, very interested in the katas that we were doing, and they thought they were really advanced for the stuff that we were doing in our age group. They're like, where did they learn this? And they're like, oh wait, it's that guy. Yeah, so it was just that had reminded me of that, and I never got around to learning the older 16 set of katas for utilizing the katana, which I was mildly disappointed with because I had left to go do other things before I'd gotten to that point in my studies with Aikido. But at the same time, Aikido was not so much an art that you would find quite like Shingi or Bagua. It's more the guy that started. I forget what his actual name was, but O-sensei is what he's called.
Morihei Uesheba.
That guy.
I've gotten a little bit wrong, but yeah. Actually, as like a side point, you just mentioned Bagua. Before he created Aikido, he spent time in Japan, and China. One of the Chinese martial arts that he learned was Bagua-zhang. That's where a lot of the circularity comes from. Even though Bagua is a style that prefers to strike on the move, continuously move and strike while on the move, it's actually really great at joint locks because the constant repositioning of yourself in relation to your opponent and their techniques puts you in a good position to lock somebody up in various ways to various degrees. So you were saying. When O-sensei started Aikido, he had the general idea right, but then he got religious. And well, there's generally, there's nothing wrong with religion, but when you're trying to study a martial art for combat, at the time, that can get in the way of the end results of survival. Whereas it becomes more of a aesthetically pleasing per se, but funny enough, a friend of mine that was looking at Aikido, he had studied Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, and for the grappling and the joint locks, because he had done Judo, he went to Aikikai, and he was like, "What are you guys doing? Like, why is it like?" They're like, "Oh, no, and then you're supposed to do this," and he's like, "You're not pinning me. You're not pinning me. I'll show you a pin. Grab, crunch." And they're like, "Oh." And so the needs of a 20-year-old man from martial arts are going to be a hell of a lot different from the needs of a 70-year-old man from martial arts, to say the least.
Oh yeah.
We now have Matt Peterson, Yoga Midnight, with us. Excellent. The group is now complete. So Matt, I don't know if I mentioned this yet to you. We're discussing the etiquette around the formal practice of Santi-share as a follow-up to the last episode.
Explain re-etiquette.
Okay, so you know how when you practice just Santi-share on its own, or when you assume Santi-share as the beginning posture of a routine or a technique practice, what do? You
mean like the first thing?
Yeah. You don't just put your hands in the position goofily. I mean, you do if you're a goofball, but I know you don't do that. I know well-trained people don't do that, but
I don't know what it is, but it's important because when I got in a fight when I first came here, it happened in my body before the guy got scared.
Right? That's one nice thing about it, is that it doesn't just center and prepare you for practice or usage. It also is a very overt, deliberate, unmistakable display to another person that I am about to fuck you up in a systematic way.
What do you name for that first kind of like breath in, breath out?
Oh, well, it's specifically what we're talking about here. We're talking about etiquette. We're talking about etiquette and signatures that are built into the practice of a martial art. As the example, we're going to use the way you open formally and close formally, practicing Santi Share as a single standing exercise in and of itself in Shingi Chuan. So Alex is just learning this sort of stuff. You know, he's got the ideas of the posture down, but you know, how do you open it specifically? How do you close it? You know, and actually before we started filming, he mentioned he basically does what he's seen me do, which is exactly the point we're getting at. It's one of those things. It doesn't just prepare your body. It doesn't just prepare you to practice a technique or a method. It's also a deliberate, overt signal to other people what you're doing, who you learned it from, and when in their teaching career you learned it from. Possibly also who the other members of your cohort of students is, you know? So, interestingly enough, Alex does something similar to what I do now. But I know that what you do when you assume Santi Share is more like what my practice was like, you know, 12, 13 years ago, as opposed to what I do right now.
Yeah.
Your emotions are a little bit bigger than what I do now, you know. Like Alex had mentioned earlier that he brings his hands up to about shoulder level before gathering them in. Mine don't really even come higher than the solar plexus. You know, I've made everything very compact in relation to Shinyi's preference for having things be tight without being constrained, you know, like tightly knit, not like physically tightened up, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
He was just also talking about etiquette and formality related to his first martial art, Aikido.
It was all working out great, and then forget that you know what, I'm gonna mess up that name so bad. I'm just gonna call him a sensei at this point. He had the general idea. He had taken from other martial arts, including Bagua. Then he got religious with it, and sometimes that gets in the way of survival.
What was his like? What was the religion that?
I'm not entirely sure, but it wasn't Shintoism, was it?
Well, I mean, he had that general sort of the Japanese version of like a popular eclectic religiosity. You know, some Shinto mixed in with some Buddhism.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes a lot more sense now. Okay.
With a nice little peppering on the top of Confucian social morality, but the bulk of it is definitely Buddhist Shinto sort of style. You know, protect life. You would know as a the style.
I could never figure out like what made Aikikai or Aikido so incredibly soft compared to everything else that I'd been taught.
Yeah.
Even as like a small child, I was taking like karate and kung fu and learning all these like animal styles and whatnot. And I was like, what makes Aikido so incredibly soft? And it's Buddhism and Shintoism. What?
Yeah.
Why did it take so long for me to? Yeah.
Originally, it was that idea that comes out of the Chinese military tradition of the soft overcomes the hard, in the sense of if you're sensitive and relaxed and responsive and aware, you're going to beat somebody who's tense, breathing ragged, burning all their energy, just standing there doing the tough guy vibration.
Yeah.
You know, originally Aikido was that sort of thing where you're out there trying to look like a fighter to people who aren't involved in this fight, whereas I'm here trying to not get killed and to also beat you. That was the original idea. So the more martial type of Keto players, that's what they'll do. That's what you'll see with them.
Yeah.
What you learned is a Keto from later in his life, where he was an old man and he wasn't getting in fistfights in the street. He wasn't living during a war anymore. He didn't have to worry about, foreign, like racist foreign soldiers rolling up on him and being like, oh, do, and running their mouths.
That's what they do.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So Matt, now that you know what we're talking about, any unique points to add in? Any like specific quirks, ticks, signatures in your practice, like something that sets you apart? Can you tell? Can you identify habits you have that you learned from me as opposed to habits you learned from your second teacher?
It's weird. Well, it's weird being kind of like because when I initially started, when I started to learn from Martin, initially there was a very like painful period of kind of like stripping down the practice to this like extended Tunasi Ba routine without doing Santisher for like a couple months, and it fucking sucked because like that was what I was doing every day. You know what I mean? And there were I've teased apart some things. His style, which I guess is like Master Lee was like his teacher. I don't know his full name, but it was very very soft, but I think that there were certain nuance, like recently I asked you for suggestions to adjust the standing, and I think Martin's style, he was a little kind of like, oh, you can start it however, and you can like you don't have to like go down so far. But I actually think that there was something mechanically problematic in that. Like I think that like the posture actually feels more comfortable and safer now that I've started to like press the weight down a bit. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that's like uniquely Matt Peterson about my Xingyi right now, except for the fact that it's like so like heavily, it's just like integrated with yoga, where it's like, I'll do one and then the other, and then they kind of need to go together, satiated, but they're totally different. And then which one I do first makes a big difference, because Xingyi increases this like forward driving power in the outer world that yoga doesn't. Like yoga it feels awesome and it hits a lot of like points, but when I do more, like when I start with Xingyi or I'm doing more Xingyi, it makes me more like just like participating automatically, like talking to people, just kind of like, oh, what's going on. But actually I want to say this. I started reading this book on NLP, and then I was talking to this, like I was working at a convention, and this lady started talking to me about, we were talking about the brain, and she was talking about this study, which you've probably heard of. I think it came out sort of recently, saying that they found that conservative types tend to be more focused in the back, in like the what is it called, limbic system, and then like whereas liberals tend to be more on the frontal cortex. And that was really fascinating to me, because when I started to practice Xingyi, it completely altered my perception of reality and like it like how I interface with reality. And I think that it has to do with that, like now it's like strip down, get out of your fucking head, focus on the body, and then these are your values, you know what I mean? Right? Like what do you like what do you really want? What are you really doing here versus this kind of being stuck in like abstractions, or
increasingly, especially Americans who write on Xingyi, they'll use like automotive metaphors. Most martial arts are like a normal, comfortable, safe, family-oriented vehicle. But Xingyi is basically whatever you have, just really souping up the engine so that everything is super efficient and overblown and overpowered.
Yeah.
So what you were saying about feeling like you're directly engaging the world or reality more with Xingyi, that's definitely something that comes about from practicing it. You kind of, even if you don't move while you're talking, your words have the effect of that straight Bung Chuan punch of you're just going right for, I could move my body and go right for the center of your torso, or I could just use my words and go right for the center of your, self-identity or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So this is a bit redundant to what we're talking about, but I sent, before we started, I sent Alex some links, Matt, and I'm sending them to you again.
Ooh.
There you go. One is to the, they're both links to the website, to sicknesskungfu.com. Plug. One is to the, one is to the page on practice methods related to Santi Shi specifically. The other is to the, to a post on the 8 appearances training method, which is basically about key points that you want to have in the mechanics of the practice. So even if you're practicing standing still in Santi Shi, these are things you want to do in your torso and things you want to do with your arms and legs as you assume the position, close the practice of the position. But if you're also practicing the 5 fists or the 12 shapes or any of the routines or any of the fighting sets, these principles will also apply to all that stuff. So it's the second one, the 8 appearances, is key ideas, key points on how Xingyi thinks about the body.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that should help a little bit.
All right, I'm not gonna read it right now.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to. It's just just so you know. So if I drop a quote or if I pull something specifically from those documents, you'll know. I'm not just like pulling out of my ass. I'm actually referencing something specific. So, dead air. So,
people over edit videos.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. You saw, I didn't even put the last two. The last one we did, it ended up coming out in 2 parts because even though I was fully capable of putting them together in one video, I was just like, I'll make 2 uploads. That'll be fine.
Where is it up? Because when I tried to, something happened when I clicked the link where I couldn't find it.
Oh, well, if it's like that, then I will grab the link up for you right here.
We gotta edit in more promos, and more over the top. In some movies where they have that song that's like da 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 da, it's like the almost like da, da, like chaos in the background, like people, like
yeah,
D-Day.
Yeah. I added in on the most recent video I did probably about 3 weeks ago. I obviously haven't done anything for YouTube because of the new job, but there you go in the chat. That's the link to the YouTube channel. You can find it. You can find what's up there. What was I just saying? I don't know. Well, Matt, you missed the beginning, but this isn't water.
Neither is this.
So
My drink. Where's my drink?
yeah, I for the Santi Show video that I made, or a Shingy related video that I made, the most recent video, I added in a little joke promo at the end, along the lines of what you're talking about, just sort of a typical running joke that's been around as long as the Sickness Kung Fu website has been around. And it will be at the end of this video as well. Yeah, so back to oops.
What's the opening for Bagua? Is it? It's not the same thing, is it?
Well, it's similar. It's similar. Where Xingyi will bring the hands up, you know, some people will do the full on performance wushu style that you see where they come way up over their head. Some people will just come up to shoulder height. I mentioned to Alex before we started filming the particular version of Hebei style Xingyi that I learned at YMAA. They would bring the hands up, palms down to shoulder height. Then the hands would come together, you know, obviously doing like a, you know, left hand, left leg as the forward hand and leg. They'd come together with left over right hand, and then the right hand would pull back toward the dantian, and as it reached the dantian, the palms would settle down.
That's interesting.
And you would step forward. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
What I do is obviously, yeah, Alex just sort of showed basically what I'm getting at.
Back up a little bit more, probably you'll be able to get the full body posture.
What I do now is more of my hands kind of come up and then they stay close to the abdomen and they just sort of, you know, not very wide, right in front of my body. They come up, come right back down and gather into the dantian, to the belly button area. Then the rear hand, the right hand will rise up, the left hand will come up over the top, and I'll settle into the Santi Shrimp. That's what I do now.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've started to do more because I currently the opening I'm doing is more like the one that you initially taught me because like there's a lot of nuances from Martin's practice that I'm like doing that right now
So to get back at the question, what Bagua Zhang will do is similar. The hands will come up to about, you know, top of the head. They'll start to close down. But as they close down, instead of coming all the way down and, you know, down to about the waist or the belly button or dantian area like most martial arts will do, they'll come down and then... Did you guys just hear that?
No.
Okay. Well, my web browser just brought up the YouTube, the Uncle Sickness YouTube channel. So it started playing the channel trailer video in my ear, which I'm sure you both remember when we filmed that. But anyway, so Bagua will come up, come down, and then as it gets to about the bottom of the chest, top of the diaphragm, if you're going to do, you know, it'll vary depending on if you're doing left turning with the left hand as the lead hand or right turning with the right hand as the lead hand. Whichever hand is going to be the lead hand, I'm going to use the right for this example. It'll come down. The right hand will go underneath the left hand. And then come out and around like that. Actually,
right?
Yeah, it's one of the things that Bagua, every martial art has certain things for mechanics. It has extending and contracting, putting a limb out, bringing a limb back toward your body. It has opening out and closing in. Bagua just, because it's a three-dimensional spiral that's moving in a circle in three-dimensional space, there's something that just causes a hiccup or hitch in most people's mind when they see it, you know?
When they see it, like people that aren't practicing, like whoever's.
Yeah, when they see it in general, if it's somebody who's never seen this martial art before, they go, "Whoa, what? That doesn't," you know. One of the most obvious things said about it is, how is that martial arts? How does walking in a circle help you not get beat up in a fight or win a fight?
Mm-hmm.
You know. Another thing that'll be said is people will just be like, I don't understand what I'm looking at, because it's so the spiraling action. You know, when you really break it down, when the limbs do this sort of thing, the arms are spiraling on their own central axis.
Mm.
The arms are spiraling, contracting and expanding in relation to the torso. When you add the walking in, the torso is spiraling from the feet up to the head, you know, driven by the waist. And then you add walking in a circle. So now you have a spiral that's spinning on a circle, a three-dimensional spiral moving through three-dimensional space. People don't get it. It's confusing as hell. And that's the big challenge in learning Bagua Zhang, is learning to think about a three-dimensional space moving in a spiral fashion through three-dimensional space, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I haven't done Bagua in a while. I like Bagua though; it was fun.
Yeah, one of the common sayings in the martial arts world is that there are a lot of styles that are sort of inverse opposites of each other, and if you learn both, it'll give you overwhelming power.
Awesome.
Like Baji Chuan and Pigua Zhang, or in more along the lines of what we're talking about, Xing Yi Chuan and Bagua Zhang. The saying is, if you learn both, if you learn Xing Yi and Bagua, ghosts and gods will be afraid. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
my personal preference is both gods and demons both hear you.
Exactly, because it's the same ideas. The mechanical principles are the same for both styles, but the way they express them, you know, Xing Yi uses these mechanically superior ideas, and it only uses them in the mid to short range, you know. Whereas Bagua Zhang takes a lot of the same principles and it applies them to long, middle, or short range. But they're essentially the same. Three-dimensional spirals in three-dimensional space. Whereas Xing Yi will do a three-dimensional spiral directly into your personal space. Matt, you probably remember. I'm quite sure you remember what I'm about to say. Alex, you probably remember this from our time at the museum. The Xing Yi idea is, I'm standing here, you're standing there. You blink, then I'm standing where you were, and you're laying on your back 10 feet away going, what the fuck just happened? Xing Yi Chuan is militaristic in the sense of, I'm going to take your territory away from you aggressively. Bagua Zhang will take the same mechanical principles, but it will instead of applying them directly to you, I'm going to break your guard and then break your stance and then take your space. That's the Xingyi idea. Bagua is, I'm going to walk to your empty door. I'm going to walk to a place that you are not thinking about, that you are not prepared to be attacked from. And I'm going to do the same thing as Xingyi to you from there. So Xingyi, well, we're facing each other the way we're all fronting the camera right now. So just think of it like this. If I'm using Xingyi on you, we're facing each other like this. I'm going to come directly at you. I'm going to go through whatever you put up. I'm going to hit you in the torso. Then you're going to fall down. Bagua is, we're facing each other like this. One of us starts to move. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me. It doesn't matter. The movement begins. And then before there's any contact, I'm going to step into your blind spot. And then I'm going to do directly into your torso. So you're coming forward. You're putting all of your intent, all of your mass into this front-weighted, you know, I'm resisting an attack from the front by defending my front. Whereas all of a sudden, the Bagua man is going to be on your right shoulder or your left shoulder. Or they're going to be behind you. And they're going to come through you with that spiral motion. Ultimately, it, depending on what question you ask, you know, people will say, like, which is a better style? Okay, well, what are your preferences? Do you always want to overpower your opponent? If you always want to overpower, Xingyi is going to be better the vast majority of the time, because Xingyi overpowers almost everybody. It gets in close. Most people can fight at full extension of their limbs. They can't fight in here like this. Xingyi will come into this range and beat the crap out of you. Bagua, it keeps the hands out here, but it can release power here, here, or here. You know, it can use the palms to strike you, or the elbows, or the shoulders. You know, it can get you with any part of the body. Xingyi can do it too, but what Xingyi is known for is, you know, I'm going to shoot you in the chest with this. Or, actually, and this is a saying related to a lot of styles of Xingyi Chuan. When I hit somebody in the chest, I want them to spit up blood. So
one of my favorite things that you like initially, like when we were at the Gardener and you were talking about the footwork, one of my favorite quotes that you gave me was that it's been said of Bagua that the movement is like a mythical beast, like you know, like phoenix, and that or dragon, and that with Xingyi, it's like you're treading on the corpses. It's awesome.
yes,
that's all that I want.
Yeah, the face is pleasant, but the eyes are vicious. You're smiling. You look like a normal person, but if anybody looks you in the eye, they get that telepathic flash. I will kill you.
And they get it too. That's another thing. I mean, again, this is just, but it's interesting to me how, like, as you know, and this is just sort of like walking around stuff, like, you know, like martial arts makes me more articulate, like physically, you know, like, you know, like you move type stuff. And it's interesting how much, just how I think most people's bodies are unconscious, but they actually perceive more than they're aware, you know, because most people will be like, da, 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 da. But if it comes to that, like, you better not fucking walk into me, then they move at the last second. It's just funny that people's body minds are running, you know, they're just not conscious of it.
Yeah. It's that idea that there's you, and then there's the weird ego idea that you have of yourself that you want other people to believe in too. You know, the people who have the heaviest impact socially. I feel weird saying this, but it's definitely the truth. People like me and people like Matt, you know, Xingyi is so appropriate because there's, you know, what you see is what you get. If you bump into me, I'm going to fucking knock you down. If you reach out to touch me and I don't know you, I'm going to hit you. And it's going to be in a place that's going to make you fall down. That's simple. Maybe it'll be the face. Maybe it'll be the solar plexus. It's going to be somewhere. I'm going to punch you in the middle of something. That's me. Alex, I know you're not quite there yet. You have a lot more respect for other people and their human dignity than either of us do. But
partially also it's required of me given my given what I need to do at the moment, but I'm sure that's going to change really fast really soon.
Yeah,
and soon enough it's going to. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to need all of the help that I can get. So
welcome to the world of turning to people when they say things you don't appreciate and going, "What are you, gay?" Yeah. So anyway, dead air. To bring it back slightly to the point that we were starting on, the way you open and close your practice for any martial art, it's going to show really overtly. It's going to show who you learned from, when in their teaching career you learned from, and on a slightly more personalized level, who else was in your group that you learned with. So, using us as an example, Matt, you learned from me when I first started teaching. I mean, I hadn't been teaching martial arts for more than 2 or 3 years when I started teaching you. You're from the beginning of my career. Alex, you're from, you know, within the last 5 years. So, in one sense, Matt learned from the old, invincible, unbeatable, indestructible Brad. And Alex, you started learning from the sick. Man, I need to make some accommodations because I don't have as much stamina, Brad. So, there are things that you both do that for somebody that's really observant is going to know, all right, I know who they learned from. But it's also going to show where in my life you met me. On a larger, like to make it more philosophical, how you enter your practice shows some of the philosophical ideas behind both your style and your approach to your style. So in the links that I sent you in the chat, which I will add the links to these particular posts from Sickness Kung Fu into the description in the eventual YouTube video that's going to come from this. The document on Santi-share specifically, just Santi-share, it talks about why does the martial art Xingyi Zhuan call its most basic practice, it's like primary core posture, Santi-share. What are the philosophical ideas and implications behind this name for this practice? So, how you enter your practice isn't just meaningless. You know, when the teacher tells you, this is how this, you know, such and such exercise is our core exercise. Such and such procedure is how you practice our core exercise. If you disregard that, you're telling a more traditional teacher that you aren't worthy as a student. You know, whether it's an old Chinese man or me, you know, If I tell you this is how you assume, Santi Share is the core of Xing Chuan. This is how you open the practice of Santi Share. This is how you close the practice of Santi Share. If you don't do that shit every single time I see you practice, what you're telling me is you aren't worthy of the real deep teaching, the deep kung fu, the deep ideas, you know?
Mm.
I've mentioned this in private discussions. The differences between a public student, a private student, and a disciple. You know, you guys are good examples of that. Matt, you are definitely a private student of mine because there's a lot of things I tell you that I wouldn't tell somebody giving me money for this. But there's a difference between you and Alex. I don't tell you how to live your life. I don't tell you how you should go about things. Partially because I know you wouldn't listen, but also partially because I don't need to tell you how to do those things. But there are things I tell Alex, you know, because, you know, what were you, like 20 when I met you? So there are things like,
me?
yeah.
Yeah, I was 20, Jesus, like 21, 22.
Yeah. So
Okay.
when Alex and I were working at the museum, a bunch of people, and Matt, you know exactly who I'm talking about because they were there when you were there. They were still there when Alex was there, and they're still there now that all three of us are gone. They tried to mock Alex by saying, "Oh, he's Ruka's disciple." It's like, all right, first off, are you making fun of him or are you making fun of me? Second off, you know what? Fuck you. Yeah, he is my disciple. I'm going to tell this dude how to get mad bitches, and none of those bitches are going to be you ugly bitches. So it's exactly that sort of thing, you know? The difference between somebody like you, Matt, and somebody like you, Alex, is I'm going to teach you both the same thing martial arts wise, but I don't need to tell you certain things, Matt. Whereas Alex was in a position where not only was nobody telling him certain things about how life works, about how people work, they were actually telling him opposite. Okay, we're back. So we've been talking about Santi Share. Santi Share is the core, still standing practice of Xing Chuan. It literally means three bodies pattern or three bodies form or three bodies posture. Another variation is San Sai Share, three powers posture. Three powers being a Taoist idea of heaven, earth, and humanity.
Cool.
So in the terms of like a physical individual body in martial arts terminology, it's head, hands, and feet. Those are the three powers or the three bodies. You know, which is another way of saying your torso, your arms, and your legs, all unified as one individual physical being. Those are the ideas you want to keep in mind in practicing Santi Share. So the whole thing about the etiquette of you know, the formality, the ritualistic aspect of opening and closing Santi Share as a practice is something that internal martial arts have that makes them superior to other types of martial arts. No matter the level of advancement or sophistication of the style, the big three internal styles of Xing Chuan, Baguazhang, and Taiji Chuan are philosophically superior to other Chinese martial arts because in practicing the basics of the style, you are physically, physiologically embodying basic principles of core Chinese philosophical, metaphysical understanding of the universe, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like the aspect, it feels very like it's just it sort of like opened up after a certain amount of years of practicing it, where it's just like, yeah, now I can go into that state. And now oftentimes that's like, no, it's not the same as a default, it's not a default state because I'm walking around, but like, you know, getting close to that openness just on the regular is like, you know.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how much familiarity you have with this, Alex, but Sun Lutang's book on Xing Chuan, Xing Chuansha, Xing Chuan studies, or Xing Chuan scholarship, whatever, you know, however you want to look at it. He talks about this idea that the big thing about the way you practice, you know, the formality, the etiquette, the ritual of assuming Santi is you are physically embodying the ideas of the progression from Wuji, nothingness, through Taiji, through Liangyi to Yin Yang, to Santi. You move from a state of absolute void, Wuji, to you conceive the idea to make a physical movement. That's Taiji. To you begin to differentiate and distinguish yin and yang, upper and lower, forward and backward, left and right, etc., etc. To Santi Shi, or Sansai, 3 powers. You begin to physically, like standing in Santi Shi is, you have physically embodied an element of core, fundamental, philosophical, metaphysical thought. You know, that's one of the things that makes an internal style superior to a regular style of martial arts. Why is Xing Chuan better than Taekwondo? If you're talking about fighting, it's a matter of preference. Do you prefer to punch or do you prefer to kick? But if you're talking about cultural, metaphysical embodiment, expression of higher, advanced spiritual ideals, Xing Chuan beats most of the martial arts hands down, every day. Because in just assuming Santi Shi, you are physically going through a set of motions that symbolize or encode or encapsulate the basic idea of Chinese metaphysical comprehension, idea, understanding.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So there's a lot more to it than just you stand like this because it lets you punch people in the dick harder.
One time I was on, I think it was mushrooms. I think it was on mushrooms, and then I just like practiced this, like, and the feeling sense I had throughout it was like I'm actually like, was that the practice of Xing Yi was like felt like a shaman like creating the universe through ritual action. Like that was like very specific. There was a sort of like profound, like, you know, that these were like these core, you know, that each movement was like reflecting some, you know, just like nuances of the cosmos, right? And then I got practicing and I lost my ego and I was like, you know, but when I was practicing, it was amazing.
Yeah, no, that's really how it goes. That's really what it comes down to. If it's Xing Yi or it's Bagua or it's Taiji, Tongbei Chuan, you know, more advanced types of mantis boxing, Tailang Chuan, that's the idea, is that you're through your motions, you're doing these motions, but they stand for something more important, more advanced, deeper, more all-encompassing. It's hard to put in English because English is such a practical language, but like the idea is by doing this, I'm doing the majority of what the universe entails. If that makes any sense. I know Matt definitely gets this, with his focus on spirituality and the experience with psychedelics, but like,
I'm not allowed to do psychedelics yet.
Yeah, I'm saying it like I'm repeating it the way that I am because I want to make sure that Alex, as the representative of a novice,
Fuck up, Brock. I get to put my cat.
Yeah, you're like, you stand in for the novice in the sense of, you have compared to the two of us, you have just begun studying the style, but also in the sense of you don't feel it or jump to the assumptions that Matt and I do.
I see.
When comments are made, like when we use the rubrics or the aphorisms or the sayings of the style, there are certain things that are immediately brought to mind, that are immediately obvious to Matt or me, that are not immediately obvious to you. So, like, that's the key to your like, this is great for you as an individual to be in on this conversation, but like at the same time, for everybody that isn't a Shinyi outsider, you're their window in to the idea of, what do they mean by three bodies? What do they mean by three postures? What do they mean by 5 fists, 5 elements? What do they mean by 12 shapes? You're the way in for I don't want to say normies, but
normies.
Yeah, like in the Xingyi sense, like you're not a Xingyi man.
Yeah.
You're a Xingyi man now, but for somebody that's an outsider, for somebody that doesn't practice Xingyi or doesn't practice martial arts, doesn't practice internal martial arts, you're the best avenue of entry that they have, because there's a lot of things that go without saying for me. There's a lot of things that go without saying for Matt. Because we have a decade plus of experience, respectively. So your perspective is going to be a lot more important for beginners, for outsiders, for newbies, for, suckers, whichever it ends up being. So your perspective, your like reactions, your ideas are really important here. So
I see.
Throw some of those in.
Got it. Yeah, I was looking at, which one I was looking at? I was looking at one of the documents that we have on here on the site. It was the I think I brought this up before, but it was the 8 Xingyi Xuan's 8 essentials. It was the 3 centers must merge, and the 3 centers, with the concept of the center didn't. I mean, the first thing that I jumped to was the center where the dantian is in the belly button. That's what immediately came to mind, because you don't have 3 belly buttons, so there's 3 parts that are coming together as one, but I didn't know what those 3 parts were. And then there was the dog just fell down the stairs. What the fuck?
You okay?
Oh yeah. No, I heard a crash.
Is your girlfriend laugh?
You could hear her cackling.
Okay.
Try to be a little bit more serious, but there's the three. I'm not sure if you can hear her laughing, but
No, I can definitely hear the dog. I don't know if it's clear in the video, but I can hear the dog.
okay.
Oh, that's
The three intentions, the three centers, and the like the four tips. What I was thinking, the four tips are usually what I would expect would be the extensions of the body, like the toes and the fingers. And the three intentions, I guess, are it starts with the thought and then it ends with the act. I'm not sure what that middle ground is.
Yeah. It's intent. It's using the mind specifically in relation to energy, in relation specifically to physical, muscular, brute force, in relation specifically to mechanical motion. Those that's why it's hard to explain, because in one sense it's like I could make it easy, but you'd have to already know about a previous era of Chinese martial arts intellectual development.
I see.
You know, like the four tips in one sense are two ideas: the skin tip and the teeth tip. You know, the hair and the bones, related to skin breathing and bone marrow breathing as a martial arts method, contrasted with the tongue tip and the fingernail or like finger and toe tip, related to the musculature and tendon ideas of physical development. If that makes any sense?
Yeah.
So one idea is contrasting breathing as a device to divide, leading the chi from the surface of your body to the center of your body. Whereas the other idea is using breathing to drive, leading the chi from the flesh in and of itself to the tendon and ligaments and connective tissue specifically.
I see.
In and of themselves, if that makes any sense.
Starting to make sense. I do have a copy of Grey's Anatomy, which is very, very helpful.
Yeah. No, any anatomy book, whether it's Western or like Chinese specific or martial arts specific, which I also will send to you a particular martial arts anatomy book that I recommend. It's there's like different levels you want to be able to think of. You know, it's not that they're not necessarily absolute, because nothing is absolute. But if we're looking at it from a Xingyi perspective, you want to be able to differentiate the musculature from the tendons.
I see.
From the bones, from the chest, the surface of the, you know, the most general idea, the skin, the surface, as opposed to the core idea, the bones. You know, like as somebody who was really familiar with me during the height of my illness from Crohn's disease, you saw how sick I was.
Yeah.
But why did I still make people pause? Why was I still scary in the idea of like a fist fight?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a regular sick person is not scary, but a sick martial artist can still be scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because I might not have the muscle to back up my techniques, but I still have the technique to damage your physiology. If that makes a mistake. If that makes any sense.
Yep. Trying to improve the lighting a little bit by having a flashlight in my eyes.
Yeah, no, we lost Matt somehow too.
Yeah. I have 2 lights on me.
You're the star of the show. Did it make a difference, really?
A little bit. Did you try checking the downloads folder where that file should go? Brad?
Yo.
Did you check where that file should be?
Yeah. No, I found it. I did find it.
Okay, good.
So we're not in
Total.
a position like that, but I'm trying to figure out an easy way to get Matt back in here. Because we are still recording.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Okay. I think I have it. Here we go. Uh-oh.
Oh, what?
You can still see me, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've been drinking. I've had so much to drink.
Yeah, that definitely isn't water. Maybe you should stop.
Never. I'll never stop.
I know you won't.
All right, he's invited. So he'll get back in when he gets back in.
Even Arabella was telling you to stop. He's like,
Never.
You heard her whine?
Never.
She whined. She's like, I'm worried about you.
Never. I'm of Irish descent. And I'm strong, too, which means I can drink a lot more than this and don't have to worry about damage.
Yeah. With the combined Polish, Russian, and little bit of Irish that I think outweighs the Italian in me, I should be able to hold my liquor mildly. Wow.
I have Russian, Scandinavian, Czechoslovakian, Irish, German in me, and I don't feel any burn going down, and I also don't get drunk.
She doesn't get drunk, apparently.
Yeah, she says that now.
I have chugged 2 bottles of alcohol. It was a Bacardi 151 bottle and a Captain Morgan's. At the same time. Finished it within an hour, actually.
Describe the hand motion I'm making, Alex.
That's the description. Oh. This is you.
Yeah, I'm all talk.
Yeah, this is what you
Ask
should
my
be
brother.
doing.
He'll tell you the whole thing.
We'll see. We'll see soon enough, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. We'll swing through Ohio at some point.
I would love to have a drinking competition with you.
You'll lose, but that's only because I'm talented.
I'm one of the very few in my family that still has her gallbladder, both of her kidneys, a functioning liver.
You know this is recorded.
Yeah, we're recording.
They can hear you.
Okay.
That's fine.
It's common knowledge.
Right?
you, Alex.
I know they can see me. They're supposed to see me. It would be mildly boring if they couldn't see me. Isn't that right, puppy? The dog agrees.
Dogs know what's up.
Mhm. Do your commenters on the website have they seen the YouTube videos yet?
Most of the comments, honestly, are for the Mantis 14 roads of spring leg. Spring leg Tantui is a basic northern Chinese martial arts style.
Mhm.
It's really concerned with training the waist and the legs, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But so my most popular post on the website, I've got about 1,010 comments. I'd say more than 600 are related to Mantis 14 Roads Tantway. The most popular Tantway is Shaolin 12 Roads, but there's also Muslim style 10 Roads. That's pretty popular too. I actually learned Muslim 10 Roads before I learned Shaolin 12 Roads at YMAA.
Ah.
So,
Which could you link the you said it was Mantis?
yeah,
Fine.
Mantis 14 Roads. I'll throw the link up to in the chat, and I'll do my best to add them into the description. But yeah, the Mantis 14 Roads. They're it's basically like simple Mantis techniques. Uh, to be completely honest, if you know about the Jingwu Association of like Shanghai, southern China, somebody asked the 7-star Mantis man, Lu Guanyu, about like basic techniques, and he was like, "Oh, I'll answer you tomorrow." And he came back the next day with these 14 techniques. They it's just like really simple techniques for practicing like or learning Tanglang Chuan, Mantis boxing, Mantis Kung Fu. They're fun, they're simple, they're practical. More than anything else, they're practical. If you already know how to fight and you manage to learn these 14 roads or 14 like simple repetitive patterns, you'll really be able to use Mantis boxing as like a martial arts technique.
Mm-hmm.
So you can expect these to come in through the chat now. Okay, 1 second. All right. Yeah, they're in the chat.
Nice. I see.
Ha! My shit just came up as we're running out. We have 10 minutes left
Mhm.
for just the two of us. It doesn't surprise me since I've been drinking. But yeah, we'll see if we can get Matt back in here. But before all of that, but yeah, there you go. The Mantis 10 roads. You know, just to like lay it out there. Tantwi spring leg is a simpler northern type of Chinese martial art based on training primarily the waist and legs.
Cool.
Okay, so the Mantis 14 roads are 14 short patterns for primarily training the legs, but from a Mantis technical, tactical perspective. Okay. There's actually, you might be interested in this, and I can send the link later. I've mentioned this to you before privately. The Xingyichuan Encyclopedia, compiled by Shanxi style practitioners. There's 12 roads of spring leg for Xingyichuan from there. I can send you the link for that if you're interested, you know, later. Welcome back, Matt. But the Mantis 12 roads are it's like 12 really simple, really short techniques for training practical fighting applications of Tangling Chuan Mantis Kung Fu methods, you know? It's one of the oldest posts I have on Sickness Kung Fu. But obviously it's the most popular. You know, I've got like, let me take a look.
Has Alex watched Dance of the Drunken Mantis?
I don't know. Have you seen that movie yet, Alex?
I've seen clips.
Gotta watch it. It's so good. Dance of the Drunken Mantis, Iron Armor, 5 Deadly Venoms, Chinese Super Ninja.
Yeah. Those are like if you're learning martial arts from me, those are the movies you need to watch because those have been the most influential movies that I've ever watched.
Oh, it's so good. Iron Armor and Dance of the Drunken Mantis are just up on YouTube.
Yeah. You can find all of them actually on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, they're all there. I have a channel actually where you can find all of them. But
Fist of the White Lotus is really good too.
oh, that's a great that's just a good movie because it's a good Gordon Liu movie, but it's also a good movie in and of itself.
Yeah, it's just a good movie.
It has the nice, you know, the progression.
I have to be awake in about 4 hours, so I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And clock is ticking in about not even 5 minutes now. So.
All right. So I'm sending you the. Oh wait. Damn it. Okay. Okay. For 14 roads. Here we go. All right, so Alex, you should be able to see the 14 roads post on Six Kung Fu
Yep.
any second now. There we go. All right, so I'll do my best to get all of these in the comments on the actual YouTube video, but here we go.
Practice Xingyi while we.
Yeah, back to Xingyi. So the whole point of this video was about practicing the formal etiquette of opening and closing, the practice of the core exercise of a martial art. In our particular instance, Xingyi Chuan, because we are all Xingyi men. So the reason you don't just stand in the posture, the reason why you go through the formality of assuming position is that it doesn't just show who you learned from, when in their teaching career you learned from, who you also learned with, but on a deeper level that supersedes all three of those, what you learned, why you learned it, the philosophy behind why you learned to do this physical exercise in this particular manner. If that makes any sense. That's what we're trying to get at here. So, Xingyi Chuan, for some people, especially in the Hebei lineage, which all three of us are a part of, ultimately, they'll make a difference between standing in Santi-Shi as opposed to standing in Sansai. Three bodies posture is differentiated from standing in three powers posture.
Got it.
Okay. Does that make any sense to you guys?
It does.
Are those actually different? Those aren't actually different postures, right? Are you saying that that's like
No, it's the same posture, but
is it
but the idea. So, Sansai-Shi and Santi-Shi are the same physically, but philosophically, it's a different approach to the same configuration. If that makes any sense.
Cool. So so it has a different, and because philosophically it's different, then that means that there's a different internal quality to it, right? Is
Yes.
true? Yeah.
Yeah. The way that it works out is that if you're focusing on the external quality versus the internal quality, you would, for some traditions, give it a different name. You would say Santee if you were working on the idea of making sure that your fingertips, your toe tips, and your nose, as the representative of the center of your body, are all physiologically lined up as the like primary concern,
Mhm.
versus the idea that the like I say it, the like energetically, the actions of the upper body limbs versus the actions of the lower body limbs contrasted with the actions of the torso are the primary concern.
Mm.
So that's the idea, because when you enter Santee, when you begin the practice of standing in that position for Shimi Chuan, what you're doing is you're prioritizing the the like avenue of training that you're looking to go down. Okay,
Mm.
so in one sense, you can look at it from a purely like physical coordination aspect. How are you coordinating your arms and your legs and your torso as three major branches of your physiology?
Mhm.
Or you can look at it as how are you prioritizing your techniques and your movement and your power generation, you know? So there's multiple layers, multiple um, levels to how you can choose to emphasize aspects of the practice. The basic practice is a very particular physical configuration: hands, feet, torso, you know, geometry, um, configuration. It's all very deliberate. It's all very obvious. But there are deeper aspects to it, you know, deeper implications to it. You know, your hands are here, but are we emphasizing the hands, or are we emphasizing the outgoing energetic aspect? Where, you know, the legs are here, but are we emphasizing the legs as a structure, or are we emphasizing mobility as a concept? you know, the torso is in this layout, but are we emphasizing the torso physically, or are we laying out the potential of movement, of dynamic interaction with another individual body? If that makes any sense.
Mhm. Dead air.
It's so much harder to do this when we've been drinking rum.
What kind of rum is it?
It's the Kraken.
I never drank that. Is it like a spiced rum?
It's a little spiced. It's almost 100 proof. It's like 94 proof.
Oh shit, dude! You gotta get that green. You gotta find the Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I was gonna get some rum last night, but the line was too fucking long. It's a crazy line. The place is pretty close, which is cool.
At least you got that going, though, right?
At least I have to move. It's been like a thing. Like for a couple weeks ago, my landlord texted me. He was like, "Hey, I want to sell the apartment." He's given me like a month's worth of rent and my security deposit to leave. Like, but it was like totally fucked up. But I found a place though, and it's pretty close to here.
Yeah. Oh man, it's the worst. Your landlord texts you and tells you like, "I've decided to go for the cash grab. You have to leave."
Yeah, man. I just gotten settled in, but I kind of like the other place a little. Well, it's a different vibe. I like this room.
Stupid? No good? With no talent? You shouldn't talk like that. We can fix your problem very quickly.